YouTubers. So a couple of days ago I did a video on how I like to maintain regular maintenance of my little buck loader, which is basically greasing and lubricating all the pivot points using the Zerk fittings and anything you can spray in where there isn't a Zerk fitting. What I probably should have mentioned if I'd known about it myself is something else which needs to be checked. I was riding my tractor through one of the trails the other day. It was a bit bumpy, and in fact it was when I was using the boom pole, and the bucket was not under load, but suddenly the bucket dropped, as you can see here, because the front piston or ram detached from the bucket. Now, I'm not going to blame the little buck loader in any way, because I think it's a fantastic piece of equipment. I use it so much and I work it very hard. But I do want to point out something that I should have checked, and I would recommend everybody checks, and that is this fitting here that threads onto the piston and then has a clamp on it. I pulled right out of there. Now, I think what had happened, it had happened over time. I hadn't been watching it, but you can see where the thread, the used thread has rusted as it's gradually worked its way out over probably months. And then it probably only had about a quarter of an inch or half an inch of thread holding in there that allowed it just to literally pull out. I hate to think how it may have been if I'd had a load on it or standing near it or something. So I do want to impress upon all other owners to check this on a regular basis. I don't think this is in any way design weakness. It's just one of those things that needs to be checked under maintenance. I don't see that the threads are stripped in any way. I think it's just a question of, and it can't unthread because nothing can turn. So I think it's just a question of this clamp here, so you thread it in and then you clamp that up tight, probably not being tight enough. So what I'm going to recommend, I'm going to fix mine now, it shouldn't take long. I'm going to recommend that you always check that your thread is at least through to the other side whenever you check your bucket, and then you check that this is clamped up real tight. I think the problem I had probably was it wasn't clamped up tight enough. Again, there's a lot of thread on there. The whole idea is that there is some adjustment on this for how you adjust the bucket. But so right now I need to unbolt this. Okay, probably lubricate it, thread it on, and make sure it's really tight. Well, as is so often the case with jobs that seem like they're only going to take 5 minutes, this is proving to be a little more of a challenge. Okay, so the nut came off of this bolt here quite nicely. I loosened up the collar as well before. I thought it was easier to loosen it up while it was in position here. That was all good. Problem is, this bushing here, the bolt is obviously the bolt to bushing. There's normally no movement, so it's had the opportunity to seize up there over time. So that's totally seized. I've been giving it a lot of hammer persuasion, and it's still not budging. So I've soaked it with PB Blast, and we'll hope we can loosen it up that way. I'm going to have to get a new bolt in there because I've too much hammering. I thought I was just going to have a tap it and it was going to be fine, but obviously hammering away, I've distorted the end here, which is probably going to mean it's not going to be easy to salvage, so I'll get a new bolt. But I do need to get the tractor up and running because I've got other things to do, not necessarily with the bucket, but I want to get it running right now. So I had to go the other way about doing it. I've had to detach the top piston from its location there. That is just a split pin, a pin job, easy to take off. I didn't do it that way in the first place because I didn't want to have to disconnect the hydraulics, but I've had to take the hydraulics off, disconnect the hydraulics, and now hopefully I can just thread it onto the fitting, the piston. Okay, well I tried that, and quite frankly, with the hoses attached, I don't want to take the hoses off of the hydraulic ram. With the hose attached, it's very difficult. That's heavy. My poor old shoulders are really bad, so it's difficult holding it. It's probably a two-person job to get that threaded in, hold it lined up, hold the piece, the fitting, hold the piston, and yeah, that's not working for me by myself. So I'm going to have to sit this one out and hope the PB Blaster does its job. It's pretty reliable stuff, even though it often takes 24 hours in my experience. Of course, the alternative is to apply a bit of heat. I'm always reluctant to use heat because while it heat distorts. That's why it separates things. But while you're heating that up, I could be distorting or doing damage to other parts or weakening them. So that will be the real last resort here. But again, this goes to show I should have kept my eye on that, and this wouldn't be a problem for me. Okay, so the PB Blaster didn't take too long to make a difference. I was able to hammer, with a lot of hammer persuasion, hammer the bolt right through as far as the beginning of the bracket and bushing there. But unfortunately, I'd had to damage the head of the bolt so much that it wasn't passing through. I think that was then becoming a problem. So I just had to hammer the bolt out again, and with my good old grinding little angle grinder, take the edge off of the head of the bolt there, and now I'm going to try and see if I can hammer it to that point again, and then pass it, hammer through with a bolt, a big bolt. Okay, so it's out. That was really fixed in, that bushing. The grinding and the tip was good. Then when I got it back as far as the beginning of the bushing, it was jamming again because I think it was a little distortion, so I had to push it back out, hammer it back out, and then do some more grinding. And then I was able to hammer it out and hammer through use a coach bolt to get it out. So that's going to require a new bolt. It'll be, I guess, a trip to Tractor Supply to get a hardened bolt for that. And but now at least I can try threading this on the back on the piston for a long time now. And the problem is, obviously the thread is not, there's a little bit of cross threading or some thread damage, obviously, because of the way it pulled out in the first place. I don't think that's too much of a problem if I could keep the piston from turning. Obviously it's turning in the barrel as I'm trying to turn on this. I've put some grips on it, but they're not really holding. I try to cushion to this so as not to damage any more thread, but although that part of the thread is probably okay, but even then I'm not able to hold it enough while I'm trying to, because when I try to thread this on, I'm having to put a rod through here and then use hammer force again to get it to turn. And that's as far as I've got. I don't know if you can see it. It's really tough. I'm tempted. I've tried opening up putting this is a wood chisel. I've been able to spring it open just a little bit by using that through there, but I don't want to overdo that. I don't want to crack anything. I'm wondering whether I should resort to just taking this off, getting it really hot, red hot, and then pushing it on and letting it cool over. I hate using heat, but again, that might be my only solution at this point. It's taking a long time. Anyway, I'm keeping at it. So, so the job that was going to take me, I thought, 5 or 10 minutes, at this point, I'm into it for about 4.5 hours, non-stop. But I've broken the back. The thread is through, it's on. I need to clamp it in place, put the clamp bolt around there and make sure that's nice and tight. And the solution was a combination of everything: lubricants, hammering, leverage, and heat. And the key was to use some heat, and I found that just heating it up, because I had to heat it as I went, so I was heating with it on the thread as I gradually, slowly got it threaded on. And the key was not to have too much heat, just to have a right amount of heat at a certain temperature, so that I wasn't heating up this threaded area, the threaded, obviously, piston. I found just a certain amount of heat there at a certain temperature. I was able then to get my big crowbar in there and turn it, as well as hammering it at times, all the time putting down force on this piece of soft wood. So the down force on the soft wood was clamping the piston in place, stopping it from rotating, so that I could get a certain amount of rotation on the thread. It was hard, painstaking work and very frustrating, but it's one of those things you just have to keep at. So it's done. So please, I learned my lesson. If you're a little bug owner, please take this lesson from me. Check that this clamp underneath here is always tight. Make sure that your threaded end of the piston is at least all the way through at any one moment in time. So you can never, you're sure it's never going up. Clearly the bolt must have worked its way loose at some point, which was vibration. and over time, and of course the piston can turn, so it may have literally through vibration turned its way out and pulled at the last, and then got down to the last bit and then just pulled out. Again, I don't hold I don't think this is a weakness in any way of the you know, the hydraulic system, the ram, or indeed the little buck loader. It's just purely one of those things. When you use a piece of equipment a lot and hard, after a couple of years, this can happen. So it's one of those maintenance items to keep in, you know, to remember. So please, I would recommend you know, keeping your eye on that. So a quick trip to Tractor Supply for a new cap bolt, and we're all back together and working, and it's good as new. But again, I offer this up as a cautionary tale. Please, any other owners, don't do what I do and forget to check that that is all the way through the thread, all to the other side, and that is always tight. Check tightness on that clamp bolt there on the collar. And the other thing is I would add to, in terms of maintenance, don't forget to grease your axle. The kingpins with these erks there, and the moving parts of the axle underneath it, particularly the pivot point in the middle. Because obviously that gets, well, it gets wear anyway, but with a bucket on, and it's not just because the little buck loader is mounted just at the front. Even a bucket that's mounted at the midpoint, always the stress is going to be on the front axle and the front wheels, because the weight is overhanging the front. So everything at the front takes a lot of the stress. So always remember, when you're checking a bucket, check those grease points as well. Okay, well, again, this is a cautionary tale, this one, but I hope you found it helpful and perhaps enjoyable. And if you like it, give me a like, and of course, if you want to see all my videos, please subscribe. It's free, and I've got about 50 odd videos up on these tractors and what I do with them, and all the, you know, things that how they perform and what it means to fix them and stuff like that. Okay, thanks for viewing this, and have a great day.